Welcome everyone to another tutorial from Chewie Painting. Thanks for showing up, and today I want to show you how to paint these natural wings in a quick and easy way. But first of all, I want to thank Taschengelddieb. Go check out their website. They were kind enough to provide me with a new Dominion box where these wings are from one of the Stormcast Eternals. And for this tutorial I highly recommend these brushes. I will link them down below. But now let's start with the tutorial. First of all, you want to prime the entire wing black. It doesn't matter if you don't have an airbrush, you can also use a spray can. As a next step, I've used Steel Legion Drab with some airbrush thinner. And for this step, it's quite important that you spray not inside of the wings, but the direction that I'm showing you so that you have nice black recesses. And then you can use a brighter color. I've used Bone White to do some highlighting. Next up are oil colors. I've prepared some and have some white spirit in the middle. I'm using the burnt sienna mostly, quite thinned down, and you can see how I'm just slapping the paint onto the model, and it will run similar like a shade into the recesses, but also tint the entire model in a certain color and a color hue. And here you can experiment the way you want the wings to look like, but I've used this yellow tone for the middle part of the wings and kept the rest quite dark. And for those parts I've also used mixed in some white to brighten that up, and I kinda like the idea of white wing tips in the end. So I'm using pure white spirit just to blend it in a little bit more, because in the previous step I've been quite quick and rough. But as you can see, I'm just slapping the color on, and it's nothing accurate about this in this step, but that's the fun part. You can move the color around since it's oil colors and they take forever to dry. But yeah, this is actually quite helpful in this step, because you can have the colors placed there where you want them. And then you can take a double applicator. If you Google it or look for makeup double applicator, you will find it, and use that together with the white spirit to remove any excess paint. Like you can also go back to the brush, like right here I'm using a white color with not a lot of white spirit, so it's quite dry, so you can actually see this feathered texture coming out. And here is the second wing, so you can see the whole process again in fast forward mode. You can see how I'm darkening it on the contrary side of the yellow to make that contrast, and the white tips on the outside again. Same goes for the lower part, obviously. And here another time lapse and the consistency of the paint in the background, so you can see how thin I'm using the oil colors and how fast it's going. When blending, you can either use an empty brush because the paint on the model is actually quite wet, or use a little bit of white spirit. But here is the step with a double applicator again, so you can see how the undercoat is coming through again, and it's getting this natural look and a quite natural pattern, and the colors are only in the recesses left. So here's the second part of the lower part of the wing, and you can see all the steps all over again in a very fast forward, but in reality it's quite quick too. And then you have two wings, both upper and lower side. If you want to, you can kind of dry brush with the oil colors a little bit over the wings, but then you should move on to the next step, which is shading. Classic Airbrush earth shade, and also some Raycan Flash for some variety. You can mix those tones quite well together. I took the Airbrush for the darker parts, you can see it right here, and the Raycan Flash for the more yellowish tones on the top. You won't need a cover in between with matte varnish or any similar product, because the oil colors and acrylics and the shades from Citadel, they all work quite well together. Going back to the airbrush is not necessary, but I felt like could give nice transitions in the middle and for the outer parts. this is probably the most fun part of the project because it's quick and easy and foolproof. I've linked the brushes I'm using down below, and I've prepared some colors on a paper towel, and you can see how much I'm wiping off. So you want just a little bit of paint on the brush and then gently going over the feathers. And take your time with this step. In the beginning you won't see a lot of color being left on the model, but you can see how I'm mixing in more and more colors. Like this is a lot of scrag brown in here, and you can see how it's slowly building up in the midtones. And just take your time with this, don't overload the brush, empty the brush and rub it into the paper towel and go further on the scale more and more towards the brighter tones so you can build up this nice color transition. Most models I've had on my painting table that have wings are actually really detailed and have great 3D modeled structures in it, so they're perfect for dry brushing, and this is just really fun because you don't need any skill for this and just wipe over the model. Here you can see how I'm taking the last step with the brightest color, moving in the direction of the feathers so that I don't cover the previous parts, and you have to be quite gentle. And you can see how I've messed up the upper part here because I had too much color on the brush, but I'm finishing all the outer edges, and then I can go back in and correct my mistake with the colors I have on my palette just to reduce the amount of whites I have used. And then for the other side of the wing, as a repetition for you, here's the scrag brown part where I'm going gently all over the model, picking up all the details and adding in more and more of the yellowish tones towards the brightest parts, which are nearly white. It's like this palette witch flash, which is an off-white. I really like the color, and you can see how it works well. And then if you're using this off-white, then pure white will pop out even more. And I've used this as a last step to highlight and give a little bit more of this feather structure. So it's like fine, thin brush strokes, giving the effect its final touch. On the lower half of the wing I'm doing the same, but here you can see how the dry brush kind of dictates where to highlight. So you can see all the brownish tones that have touched the darker parts of the feathers. So I will only highlight those and the very outsides of the wings where it's actually white, and then I have my natural looking wing done. So yeah, that's the result for now. As always, the more time you invest, the better it looks. So I could have definitely spent more time on the white brush strokes and all the other steps, but this is how you get a quick and easy, very natural and realistic look. I think I spent like 20 minutes on both wings, so I think that's a fair result. And if you liked it, please subscribe and hit the bell.